The Joe Budden controversy is actually correction. The Joe Budden controversies are actually incredibly teachable moments. Let me explain. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the video. There's been some updates to the story that I include, so you're definitely going to want to stay to check those out. Welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. So Joe Budden was in the midst of a controversy when another controversy came up. So now he's involved in controversies within controversies, and it's controversial. Yeah, I don't. So the interesting thing is, if the allegations being made, which have some degree of specificity from the young woman that used to work for him, that is a very teachable moment, but it's not unrelated to the teachable moments in the original controversy between him and his former co-host, and his former, Rory and Mal. I remember, so when it was announced, there was this episode that came on, he fired them, that's crazy, how dare he disrespect them like that. And I've seen lots of takes about people like, he should have never did them like that, that was crass. Kevin Hart came out talking about how the problem is Joe Budden. But I watched an Instagram, I'm guessing it was an Instagram live that he did, and in that live, if the things he's saying is accurate, which I haven't heard too much to the contrary, it's okay, there's some serious lessons there for Rory, for Mal, and for everybody else. So it's especially there's lessons for me as somebody who is a big proponent for entrepreneurship, ownership, running your own business instead of just being an employee for somebody else. Because that's what that begins with. That begins with Rory and Mal, from Joe Budden's perspective, just wanting to be employees. Actually, not exactly. They wanted to get paid like bosses, but they wanted to work like employees, from what he said. So now and that's something people have to wake up and realize. There are so many people that are just pissed off. They're upset. They hate the treatment they get at the jobs. They hate the fact that they don't feel they get paid enough. And then you've got an entire political ideology that's talking about people are being exploited and these companies should be paying a living wage. And they're saying that any company that isn't paying a living wage doesn't deserve to exist. And that these people, why should these CEOs get money, all of this money, when their employees are actually, providing the value, are actually doing the work? And here we see the reality. Because Joe Budden is talking about how much work he put in, how much sacrifice he made, and sacrifices he made and it continues to make to keep the show running. So one of the things he talked about was, once he left Spotify, he realized at that point how much it cost to keep the show running. And so now he had to start pulling money from elsewhere. He had to start pulling his savings in and putting his own money into the show to keep things rolling, to make sure everybody on the show continued to get paid. Because as he said, that's his responsibility. And that's key. If you're the boss, it's your responsibility to make sure everybody gets paid. You get paid last. If you've got to pull from your savings, you pull from your savings. Like me, that's what owner's equity is. I take my money, put it into the business. That's the job of the business owner. That's the job. Whereas other people could get upset and, we're doing this. Listen, the business owner is the one that's putting their blood, sweat, and tears in some cases, most cases, ideally, that's the job, into the business to keep it running, to make sure that everybody that's working for the business gets paid, gets what they need to get so that the business can continue going on. Because even if that business owner doesn't get paid, everybody else needs to. And so he talked about how he actually had to start pulling money from elsewhere to make sure everybody got paid, to make sure the show kept rolling. But he talked about how Rory and Mal just were like, okay, no, they just wanted to show up and do the podcast. They show up, appear on camera, blah, 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 and leave. And think about it. That's what employees do. We'll go to a job, we'll put in our 8 hours, and then we'll go home. Out of our head. Meanwhile, the owners definitely has it on his mind, but supervisors, managers, and the higher up they go, the more they are like never really off the clock. They're like, okay, we got to do this. We've got to plan for this. There's a problem over here. There's got to be adjustments made. And a business owner, especially the business owner, doesn't get to say, oh, I'm off the clock. There's a problem that hasn't been solved, that's unresolved, but I'm off the clock. Because if that business owner doesn't address what needs to be done to solve that problem, the problem doesn't get solved, everything collapses. So when you have the response, there's a reward if you're successful, but there's risk. There's risk, there's work, and there's a lot of energy that goes into making sure you can get to a point where you can get a reward. And so I really, watching his Instagram live was like, wow, there's so much. And he started talking about how these guys weren't even paying attention to what's in their contract. According to him, they're oblivious. Their lawyer, whoever signed the contract, didn't fully explain to them, or they didn't fully understand what was explained, and they believed that because they were getting some amount of the profit, that made them bosses. But remember, if you're running a company, if you're a partner, if you are a boss, it's not just the profit that's the reward that you have to look for. It's the work that has to go in to make sure everything is running smoothly. And if you've got partners, then you have to make sure, and this is what's key, if you're going into business with friends, make sure everything is in writing, especially because you're going into business with friends. Especially because if you're in business with friends, there is so much potential for misunderstandings, because there's expectations along with the friendship that can interfere with expectations of the business. So if everything must be clearly and explicitly stated and written, and why not just stated? Because if we have a conversation and I can say something, but you can hear something different. I can say something, but you, as my friend, you hear something different. You're like, okay, well, you don't mean that for me. But if it's in writing and everybody has a copy of what's written, say, hey, this is what it is. So down the line, should there be any questions, we can go back to what's written. We don't have to go by memory. And one person talking about what they said, the other person referring to what they heard. And that seems to have been the issue of them feeling that, oh, it was, the relationship was something other than what it was. But like I said, this isn't unrelated to the Olivia Dope situation. In fact, it's completely related, because just like he did that Instagram live talking about how he's the boss, he's running things, and like he has that responsibility, that carries on to how he handles and deals with his employees. So if you have this young lady working for you as your employee, I don't care how good she looks. I don't care how much you're attracted to her. You're the boss. You own the company. Because right now it's not even a Spotify deal. It's you. This is your operation. If you don't have a situation, if you don't have it clearly established, like that there's going to be no repercussions and consequences for you getting shot down or for you getting your feelings hurt, you've created a serious problem by trying to go after this woman. If you actually went after this woman, like if you're trying to like, don't, there's no, oh yeah, but was she like, listen, you run everything. Sacrifices. Amongst those sacrifices is you got to realize this young woman works for you. She is your employee. Even if you're not saying it, she can think, and she may believe if you try to get at her, you try to ask her out, that there's consequences if she says no. That there's consequences if she checks you like, nah, it ain't that type of party. And so as the boss, like, and that's the thing, that's something you should not be doing. I haven't seen anything of what he spoke, if he's spoken on the issue yet, but if he actually did that, after him, like, and in the midst of him breaking down, just exactly what the operation was, him being the boss, him being the owner and operator of this operation, like, dude, you gotta be smarter than that. You gotta realize that's a problem. That's a problem for her, because now she's got to be like, I just started working for this dude, and he's trying to, like, what? How am I going to keep my job if I shoot him down? And then she's like, okay, I just got to get out of here because I don't want any trouble. Like, you've created a problem for her, and you've created a problem for you now. If you've done this, like, you should have known better. Like, that's one of the prices, that's one of the responsibilities of being the boss. Be the boss. Because just like, there's so many problems with that. If you own the company, and now you engage, let's say it's a consensual personal romantic relationship, there's still potential for problem from other people. Other people can now say, listen, there was situations occurred, he was favoring her, if I had a problem with her, now I was being targeted, it's created a hostile worker. Like, you've created a bunch of problems by not understanding, if you're the boss, be the boss. Keep your business, like, just like with the French, everything in writing, keep your business your business. But these are lessons, teachable moments for all of us. There's certain liberties, there's certain freedom in being the boss, but there's a lot of responsibility. Do not take it lightly. So there's been some huge updates. Number one, Joe Budden had the show today. He starts off the show with the apology. He apologizes first to Olivia Dope. He says that what he said, the jokes he made, were completely out of line. He's bringing in more people to check to make sure that doesn't happen again. And he says, hey, it was a failure. He shouldn't have said it. And if that was his idea of trying to create a more comfortable space, and it was a stupid idea for him to think that, that type of joke was actually going to make her more comfortable and ease the tension in the room, when it had the exact opposite effect. So he just apologized to her straight out, said he was wrong. Then he started getting into the Rory and Mal situation, and he also addressed how other people had chimed in, people like Kevin Hart, and how he was in his feelings about it. He was mad, and he had intended to come here and, just go off on Kevin Hart. But what he realized that Kevin Hart had issues, with the business and friendships, and he realized that this was the person he needed to talk to. So he talked to Kevin Hart, and Kevin Hart said, you failed. And he was like, no, but, he started, trying to defend himself. And Kevin Hart was like, essentially, so what? And he says, yeah, in retrospect, he looked at it and said, yeah, because he is the boss. He's in charge. It's his job to get a certain thing accomplished, to keep the team going, to keep the show going. That's his job. He's the boss. The buck stops with him. So he realizes that despite the fact that technically he may not have to tell people certain stuff, technically he could get away with certain stuff, technically isn't good enough. He has a job to do. He has to run this business. He has to make sure the team is successful. So he has to take into consideration the members of his team, what they want, what they think they're getting, and what they're actually getting. And he said that once he saw that Rory and or Mal didn't really understand what their contract was, he should have made sure he explained what the situation was. He should have made sure that they knew exactly how things were operating, so that if they disagreed, they could negotiate, and if they couldn't come to terms, they could separate. But he acknowledges that the failure was on him. And that's key, because that's what it is to be a boss. That's what it is to be a leader. The buck stops with you. So the podcast is out. It's on Joe Budden TV. Check that out, because he really breaks it down, goes into detail about how he is accepting responsibility and he knows what he needs to do going forward. And this is something that any of us that are in the space of leadership, managing a team, whatever, this is what we need to do. These are the responsibilities of a leader. As always, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe. Subscribe, because if you like what I'm talking about, if you like that, we're dealing with actually learning something from seeing something happen, whether these allegations are accurate or not, whether these allegations are proven to be true. The fact that they exist is still something we can learn from. And if you agree, go ahead and subscribe. If you disagree, if you think, no, there's no truth to this story, and Rory and Mal are in the right, this dude is a thief. He's just playing people. He's not giving them what they're owed. If you feel that, go ahead and put the thumbs down. But if you give me a thumbs down, don't just give me a thumbs down and run away. Give me a thumbs down and explain why in the comment section, and I'll address it either in the comment section or in a future video. I'll see you next time.